Welcome to the Inner Revival podcast, because revival starts with you. As we allow God to heal, restore, transform us, and renew us from the inside out. We say, Lord, have your way in us. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done in us on earth as it is in heaven. Hi, friends. Welcome to the Inner Revival podcast. This is Monika Kirkland, and I am so glad that you are here because today I have a very special episode. So I had realized that we're like a year and a half into the podcast, and I've actually never had a man on the show. I've never interviewed a male guest, and who better to be my first male guest on the show than none other than my incredible husband, Ryan Kirkland. He is an incredible man of God. He is a worship pastor extraordinaire, and he also helps produce this show, and it literally wouldn't happen without him. So without further ado, please welcome my amazing husband, Ryan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Cue dog barking.
Cue dog barking, always. Okay. I'm so excited. I want to dig in a little bit. This episode's going to be fun because we are actually about to celebrate 15 years of marriage. And I feel like we just need to rewind, go back to the beginning a little bit and share our story. Starting in high school, we met when I was 15. I was a freshman in high school. He was a junior. He got friend zoned pretty hard. Got put in the friend zone.
I did not get friend zoned.
I feel like you were in the friend zone.
I don't think I realized I was in the friend zone. I think
we were both in each other's friend zone.
Yeah,
really.
I feel like you were in my friend zone too.
You just didn't even know how much you liked me. We were in each other's friend zones. At the time, I liked this other guy. You liked this other girl. But we all kind of hung out at church after a youth group. And I remember, though, we would go to Taco Bell with this little friend group of ours after youth group. And he would make me laugh so hard. And I just remember saying oh my gosh, you are so funny. I just want to put you in my pocket and carry you around so you can make me laugh whenever I want.
Yeah.
And so
that was so weird. And
it was creepy.
And such a compliment that it sparked my interest. I was like, why would she say that? She must really mean it.
Yeah. And who doesn't want to be funny and make people laugh? So I feel like you just really enjoyed making me laugh from that point on.
Yeah.
So we continued as friends. And then I remember so clearly, me and some friends went to support your band at the time. It was like one of your first few shows. And we went to this little record store. And I remember we all right before the show decided to go to the mall to kill time before the show started. And I remember we were all piling into this car. We were teenagers, so we were silly. And they were there wasn't enough seats. So they were oh, just sit on Ryan's lap. And I was aghast. I was like, what? No, I'm not going to sit on your lap. I barely know you. We're just friends. You're not my boyfriend. No, not appropriate. And I refused to sit on his lap. And I remember that little decision sparked in you just this curiosity.
Between the funny comment about carrying me around in your pocket, which I think actually came after, because I think we were talking more because I was interested from this moment.
You think?
Which was, everyone's like, we're going to go to Taco Bell.
Okay.
And then you were like...
I feel like it wasn't just one time I said that. I feel like I said that to you a lot because you really were so funny.
Well,
he still is.
I remember the moment of you being aghast to sitting on my lap as such a standout moment, because I was first I was annoyed. I was like, what's wrong with me? What? I'm not a creep, I'm doing this to be helpful, my mantra, just helping everyone. And then it also made me kind of what's up with her that she would, almost embarrass herself to be I won't
take such a hard stance.
Yeah, to take such a hard stance in front of all these fun, good people. So yeah, that was a big...
I would like to say that it was for safety reasons. I just had to be safe and to be buckled because that's what I would want my kids to do now as a mom. But it really wasn't. I don't know what was going on that day. I just felt like
you were creeped out by me.
I was just I'm not sitting on his lap. Yeah. I'm not doing it. And so I don't know how we just made it work. And I ended up sitting.
Because I was just sitting there like this. She's
Ryan Kirkland. The people listening and are not watching the video don't know what he just did, but he's just being his silly self and making inappropriate hand gestures.
We can cut it out.
No, I'm keeping it. I'm definitely keeping it. Keeping it. Okay. So then I remember like that moment, that night sparked us beginning to talk, beginning to date more.
Yeah, you actually were very forward and came up to me with
It's
your
true.
number.
Yeah, it was like this light bulb went off where you were like just a friend and I didn't really like you. But after talking that night, I remember like this light bulb moment of like, wow, Ryan, like he's really funny and he's cute. And I don't know, I think I like forget this other guy. Like I think I like Ryan. Like I just remember having this light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And so the next time I saw him, it was like the week later at youth group and we were all talking, hanging out. And I was like, hey, do you have my number? You should have my number.
That's what you said. You should have my number.
Yeah, I know. Ew, so forward.
You came up to me in the middle of like a group talking and stuff. And it was like your mission.
I don't know what came.
You were such a firecracker. I mean, you are a firecracker, but.
And I just was like.
In my mind, it's like this seared memory of you just like, hey, do you have my number? You should have my number. Here it is.
Oh my gosh. Well, luckily it all worked out. I didn't embarrass myself too badly.
No, I loved it.
Yeah, that night he called me and we ended up talking till 4 a.m. Talked all night. And then from then on, it was history, basically. It was like we just fell hard and fast.
It's true.
Aw. 20 years later, here we are, married with 4 kids, living in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So part of our story that we have to talk about is, so we were in high school. We were in Orlando, Florida. We had completely different upbringings. So you grew up kind of in the church. I grew up in a crazy family story. Didn't grow up in the church at all, but we met in youth group. Give us a little background of like your journey in finding the Lord. Obviously you grew up as a Christian, but what did that look like for you personally?
Yeah. Grew up in the church. My earliest memory of music and being a part of a church was probably my parents rehearsing in the living room to do like the special music at church. And just they'd put on like a little cassette and they would stand in the living room. We all just sit on the couch. I don't know why we were sitting there watching them sing, but that's my earliest probably memory. And then watching them do that in the middle of a Sunday service. Yeah. And then my brothers, I have 2 older brothers, a younger brother, and a younger sister. My 2 older brothers, by the time that I was probably like 10 or 11, were playing in bands. And so I think I thought, well, my parents sing in church. Now that I'm a Christian, which was a very a 2-part thing of, if you're asking like how I came to faith, when I was like 6, I don't know why I wasn't in like kids church, but I was in the main service sitting with my whole family. And I don't remember a ton now of the message, but I remember just this like beating chest, moment. And I was like, I think I have to go down when they did the altar call. I think I'm supposed to go. I'm 6 years old.
Wow.
And I tell my dad, and he's like, okay, let's go. And so we walk down to the front, and Pastor Hicks gets down on his knee, and he's talking to me. I remember him, big old smile, big old glasses, white hair, and leads me through a prayer. And I remember them signing a little card that was like my like baptism Sunday day to be baptized. So all of that was like, oh my gosh, I remember this moment, And then later, I'm just in the church, a part of church. We're very involved in church at our church, and I'm like thinking, well, I'm gonna play music. That's what I'm gonna do. My brothers play music. My family's musical. Like, I'm gonna play music, and so I started learning guitar. I didn't know there was like a thing of like worship leaders, or that there was even kind of a career in being like I think at the time would have been called like a music minister or anything like that. But I just thought, well, this is, some people, pass out bulletins, and some people helping kids, and I'll do music. But when I was like 13 or so, our church had a big split. and pretty much everyone 40 and under went to one church and everyone else stayed. And when that happened, I was like, well, we'll go with this other church. And there was no one to do music at the youth group. So I'd been playing, all of 2 seconds. And I started leading worship for our youth group. And it was such I don't know, just a moment of like, it wasn't like doing special music. It was like I was connecting to something bigger than myself. And I was a 14-year-old kid leading 18-year-olds into the presence of God. I probably couldn't have called it that back then. I probably thought more like I'm doing the music.
Yeah.
But it was a very formative moment. And at one of those times where I was at the youth group, some cool young guy with tattoos came in, and he shared the gospel in a way that was totally fresh and new to me. And so I actually was like, oh, I've already been, saved, but I just feel this like strong urge that I should recommit or like get baptized or whatever. So they walked me out to the hot tub and we got baptized right there. And so, so it was so kind of a 2-part thing.
Yeah.
Probably a longer version.
Yeah.
that I shouldn't have given. But
no, I think that's good. And especially with our kids, I know that they've accepted Christ at a young age, but I feel like it would be natural and normal that as they get a little bit older, closer to high school, that they might have a second moment where it just really becomes deeper and realer and just have like an encounter. Like, you were saved at 6, but you had a deeper encounter with the Lord. And I think
it's age of accountability kind of thing, probably. Maybe not exactly, but I think there is that moment of like, that moment of like, I know, and then I know what I know.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't look back. I didn't look back in the moment, on being 6 and getting saved. I don't think when I was 14, I was thinking I wasn't saved.
Yeah.
It was so clear in my mind, like, no, that happened and it was real. And that's what I've been, living life based on. But, this is a whole different understanding of it. So,
I mean, I feel that in a small sense, I got saved at 14, but then when I really went through inner healing and encountered the Lord in such a deeper way at 24, it just felt like my faith came alive. And like before it was black and white, and all of a sudden it was full color by 24. And so maybe, that makes me think of your experience as well.
Yeah.
I love that. So then you're a musician, you're continuing to lead worship. Can you just share a little bit of your history with, you did the band thing. You were Christians in a band, but not necessarily a Christian band. You were a touring musician for a long time. Tell us a little bit of that story of you as a touring musician, and then ultimately where God brought you when that season ended.
Yeah.
We ended up, getting married young. And then that season of the band came to a close, and then felt the Lord calling us to leave behind everything and everyone to move from Orlando to California.
Yeah.
And that was a huge moment for you, especially because you had deeper roots with your family.
I felt like I was going to, I was certain, like, making music and making music that like drew people to God was what I thought I would do. So me and some buddies, we did some bands that were very like, we're going to share the gospel with you while we, it was a very common thing. You're like doing screamo music, but then you're like, Jesus is the reason we're here.
Yeah. Emo. If anyone can just can we just have a moment for emo music and the glory of emo music back in the day? It bonded us together. I feel like we bonded over our love of sappy early 2000s music.
I know. All my algorithm right now, by the way, is like bands you forgot. And it's like all these people from, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. It's taking me down some trails. But so tried that out. One of the things that me and some buddies discovered is we were like, it feels like we're meeting lots of people who say a lot of things from stage, but act a lot different when they're off of the stage. And we would rather not say anything, but people know because they're just around us. And it's like, and so we felt like that's Jesus. Jesus, people would encounter Jesus and they would go, why is this man different? Like, what is going on? Like, and so that's how we felt. Like, let's go into bars and clubs and wherever, and let's be Jesus. And instead of just telling people that we follow Jesus and, that he loves them.
Yeah.
And so that was a big shift. And during that time, we started a band called Between the Trees. And, it was very emo. There's no better way to describe it. But it was very much like a purposeful, we are Christians in a band who make music.
Yeah.
That we want that music to draw people and have them encounter hope. We felt like we were growing up in an era of like that emo thing was very like everything's the worst and I can't trust anyone and just all that. And we just felt like we could bring all the emotion but actually lift people up and tell them there's something more.
And bring light.
Yeah. And I thought when we landed that like idea, I thought this is what I'm going to do. This is it. So for 5.5 years or something like that, we toured, got signed twice.
Toured all over?
Toured all over.
Yeah.
Yep. And
even Europe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Although the UK specifically.
The UK, right.
Yeah. So England and Scotland, but still haven't been to Italy.
I'm just waiting for him to take me to Italy, you guys. 15 years of marriage, I'm still waiting.
So when you say Europe, just want to be clear. But yeah, all over and toured with some really amazing people, toured with lots of people and I think for all the ups and downs, I still thought this is what I'm going to do with my life. And then I was on tour in California. And we were asked to play at this place called the Dream Center in Hollywood, which is like an outreach for homeless and a bunch of other things. Church is connected to it. It's a really beautiful, powerful ministry. We were asked to come and do some music at an event they were doing, and we got there early, loaded in everything, and then they said, "Let me give you a tour of the facility." They basically have taken over this hotel and turned it into like this massive outreach, food pantry and housing for people who are in between. And it was just amazing. Well, the last thing they show you is the roof. And you go on the roof of this building that's sitting on a hill in Hollywood, looking out over Skid Row. And they're telling you about like, basically what they're looking at is where they're going to go minister and where their heart is basically. But for me, I'm looking out and everything kind of falls silent. And I feel like I hear a voice say to me, "I'm going to bring you here." And it was disruptive.
Good word.
I told you about it. I may have told like Croy Bosch or like someone else like that was like a mentor in my life. But I didn't really tell many people because I was like, well, how does that work? I felt like we're not very popular as a band. And then my brain went to like, bargaining. It was like, we're going to be so big that the lead singer can live on the other side of the country to a band in Florida.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally
That's
plausible.
gotta be it. And then, I was just very quickly made aware that I don't think that's it. I think I'm supposed to leave.
Yeah.
And that was, crazy and wild.
And God was so faithful because he had already been, planning this dream of California in my heart since before we even got married. I was an actress at the time and I had an agent in Orlando and I was auditioning and doing the whole thing. But I really wanted to go to either New York or LA for more opportunities with acting. And so I had already felt so drawn to California for years and had been putting plans in motion to try to get out there.
Yeah.
But of course, we were just dating at the time, I think, when I first started that plan. And I didn't really want to, leave you, but I didn't know how it would work long distance. But God was so faithful in just working it all together. So it worked out that we were able to get married, have our wedding. And then a year into our marriage, we officially sold off almost everything we owned and packed up our little Toyota Corolla and drove out west. 2 young kids, no jobs, no prospects, no friends, just left everything behind.
No place to lay our head. I mean, we literally thought we had a place to go to. On the drive, got a call from them and they were like, you can't stay with us anymore.
Yep. we were like, do we turn around? Do we go back home? We don't really have enough money to like live in a hotel until we find an apartment.
But you're right. God was faithful. Within 2 minutes, I said to you, we could either freak out or we can, like, we've been seeing God move.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since we said yes to doing this, we've just seen God show up.
Yep.
So we can wait for him to show up or we can freak out. And like 2 minutes later, we get a text message from someone we had met one time who's now like some of our longest, dearest friends, who said, did you guys have a place to stay? You can stay with us. And it was just like, address, you know.
We immediately rerouted from LA down to our friend's house, who is now our dear mentors, the Kelso family. And so we ended up staying with them in San Clemente, which just really forged that relationship. Oh, yeah. I mean, nothing bonds you like living and sharing a home together for a few weeks.
It was, we were no longer acquaintances or friends. I mean, we immediately felt like family.
Yeah.
We would do sleepovers at their house, even after we'd moved out. Yeah.
And they've become like family to us and have been mentoring us now for almost 15 years, like almost our whole marriage. So what a blessing that was. And I look back on that season and I'm like, gosh, we were so young. Yeah. We got married when you were 22. I was only 20. And it's just so funny looking back at like this wild road that we took to where we are today now with 4 kids living in Middle Tennessee. And it's just, God is so, like, he has such a great sense of humor. And I just wish more people understood that about him. He's so funny, but he's also so just kind and gracious in our story. And it hasn't always been easy. Like we walked through some things, but God has been so, so good. And I would love to hear a little bit of just your heart for the church and for worship. We both are passionate about revival. My podcast is literally Inner Revival because I love this idea of revival starting with us, in us, through us, spreading out from there into our family, into our communities, world, all of it. And one of the reasons we really felt like God moved us a few years back from California to Tennessee was just this idea of contending for revival, like seeing revival really just sweep our nation, our world, that people are hungry, they're desperate, there's a lot of chaos and confusion, and people just need more of God and his presence. And I love how when you lead worship, you're so good at just really attuning, I would say you attune hearts to heavenly worship and you help usher us into the presence of God in a powerful way. And would love to just hear a little bit of like what God's been teaching you about just this heart of worship. And you have this really great word that he's given you this year. I would love if you could share that a little bit too, and how that fits into this narrative of just worship and being in God's presence.
Yeah. Oh man, where to start? It's funny. Like I had such a, I would say, childlike or like naive view of like I said, when I first started leading worship in church, I felt like, well, this is what I do. I have an ability and I get to do something that's like beyond me for people in service to them. And it was just, that's what I'll do. And then being in the band, being on stages, seeing people's lives like affected by this powerful thing of music, there is a part of you that elevates your identity or your standing, your part you play. And for better or for worse, I think for the better, it was a draw to like continue to be better at that. But I think the big thing that stood out to me when we were growing up and I say growing up, but like that 10 years that we were in California, I feel like God was growing our faith to understand the part we play in the church. I felt kind of like I wrestled with being significant and being like the guy who creates these powerful moments. And at every time that would happen, every time I did a great job at doing that, I felt like it fell flat. Every time I was overwhelmed and unsure and didn't know, and someone didn't show up some week, those were the times that were unbelievable. It was always that phrase of like, in our weakness, he's made strong. Like, then we make this big decision to leave California and move to Tennessee. And the entire time we've been here, I feel like it's been this continual, like, loving, but like, I'm doing this,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Every time I try to put my foot on the gas pedal, I get exhausted. I feel like, why am I doing this? I want to throw my hands up and quit.
Yeah. Same.
And and that leads to, you know, I think
Yeah.
all the like words in advance I've been getting since we've been here, they're all like surrender and, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And this year I was just so done and so over everything that I was of me trying to make it happen or waiting on God or whatever that battle has been. I felt like I'm ready to just throw in the towel. And it was in that moment of like, I don't even have a word this year. I'm not, you know, I'm so over this that I felt like a really simple word of bow. This posture. And it's so fitting to like Zach Neese, I think it is, who has a book called How to Worship a King, which is just, I cry every time I start trying to read that book. But he has this thing about, you know, we are like tent makers as worship leaders. We prepare the space for God to meet with his people. Like, he's the hero of the story.
Yeah.
He's the groom showing up for the bride. Like, and so the best case scenario is that you set a good space for people and you get out of the way.
Yeah.
Or you know, not even to get out of the way, like you're going to just like sit there on the sidelines, but more so that you then go into the presence that you meet with God.
Yeah.
And so this has felt like a, I don't know, a season of being taught that more and more. Every time I try to put my hand back on the steering wheel or try to like make something happen, there's just this like very loving, almost imperceptible, unless you're watching for it, like you and I are constantly going, where are you, God? Where are you, God? Where are you, God? Of just, it feels like God is orchestrating things in a way that reminds me, I want you to make the tent and I want you to just wait. Make the tent and wait. And so this idea of bowing, this idea of Jonathan David Helser has a phrase that he's said, I don't know, a couple times, and it's always stuck with me, is that worship is a posture of the heart. It's when we lay our head below our heart and we're back in right alignment, is the way he puts it. Or I think the way he says it is our head falls below our heart is the way he says it. But it's just this like this posture of bowing, and we raise our hearts to the Lord. And so, yeah, I've just had this. I've had this strong inclination that like we're brought to Tennessee for some purpose around revival, around pastoring artists that are here.
Yeah.
Writing songs that I think are for right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like the more I try to make that happen, the more God reminds me like he's got this.
Yeah.
And he's making it happen. And so my best thing to do is actually to bow, to let him be the hero, to like not keep getting back in the driver's seat.
It's good.
And
He's
I think
at the helm.
Yeah.
He's at the helm, not us.
Yeah, and I think for my role in the church is not just on a stage. I mean, we've both been experiencing this recently of like, there's been conversations that have felt like church that we've had with people. There's been moments of just you and I together that have felt just as powerful as any worship experience. Right. And so, just being reminded that every moment is an opportunity to minister to God and to
so good.
Yeah, to bring revival. So
yeah, I love that. It's one thing I love to talk about in general is just like, yes, church is so important. It's the gathering of the saints, but there's so many opportunities to meet with the Lord. Like I worship on my treadmill every day and I'm like, I'm in the throne room right now. Like I'm on my treadmill listening to worship and I really just feel like I am in the presence of God.
Yeah.
And
Oh my gosh, I had a songwriting session. Sorry if I didn't tell this story. Okay, so to your point, I had a songwriting session with just some friends at the church we attend, and um, didn't really know what to expect. Typically, there's like 6 to 8 of us. We split up into groups around the building, work out any ideas or things that we have. In this instance, a couple people canceled. There was 6 of us, so we could probably still split up, but we decided to stay together. We were writing a song about miracles. Was kind of the I don't know, brief or marching orders is like, hey, we have a series coming up in January. We'd love to write a song about miracles. So we're like, okay. And so one of our friends, Abby, she ends up kind of bringing up this thing. I have this idea. Here's what it's been about. And it's kind of around the idea of, she's been walking through something for a long time, but then there's these other people in her life who have recently had like some really terrible news come back up, and it just seems like, insurmountable bad news.
Yeah.
And all they're doing is praying for a miracle, that this news would change, that something would change. And it kind of leads us down this trail of thought that her phrase that she kept coming back to is that the woman who was bleeding for 12 years and all she said was, if I could just touch his robe, then I know I'd be healed.
Yeah.
And she had this phrase that she kept saying, just a touch of the hem of his robe. Just a touch could make me whole. Yeah. And we're like, oh, that's so good. Let's do that. Let's write that. So we're all in on it. We're writing, and we get, the whole experience was beautiful and just awesome. Like so many different writing sessions I've had, but it takes a turn because we're in the middle of doing like the little, like, just your phone sitting in front of you and turning on record and just let's record it all together. And in the middle of taking this take, Dwan, one of our other friends, he starts praying for the person that kind of inspired this thing with Abby. He just starts praying like very powerful and bold prayers. And we go right back into singing. We go right back into this chorus again. I mean, we've not done this song before. This is like the first time we're actually trying to do it. And it was so powerful that by the time the song finally ends, we're all crying. We're all weeping. And I can't like contain it. I'm like to the point where people are like looking over at me like, are you okay? But it was this moment of that. It was this like, gosh, like we just prepared a tent right now. And this is probably interceding for people. And gosh, I don't want to do anything else with my life than have moments like this where I know that something bigger than me is happening. And I was there, I saw it happen. And to your point, like revival, like the kingdom is at hand is the phrase that comes to mind.
And I feel like I call those moments, it's like the thin places. Like there's just these moments in your life where the veil between heaven and earth feels so thin. Yeah. You encounter the presence of God in a powerful way. And you really can't even verbalize it. You just like, it when you experience it, but you just know that like God was so very present at that moment. And I love that. And it's so encouraging to hear too, because you hear so many like horror stories of Nashville and songwriting and Christian songwriting and that space of like, man, some of these people just are not, walking the walk.
I haven't had any of those horror stories yet, but I've heard them.
But this is the heart, right? That's what it's all about. When you're writing, this is the hope that people they're not only writing this song, but they're walking it out. They're praying, they're believing, they're interceding. Like that is kingdom.
Yeah. I mean, like to your point, like it doesn't even, of everyone that was in that room, we wrote the song, did a little demo of it. We did the song at church, for the series. Like it served that purpose. There's some of us that want to like still release the song and everything,
and you should.
But I think every person in that room feels like that moment was the thing.
Yeah.
Like the other stuff would all be like a benefit and it would be a bonus. But that moment was the cherished thing. Like we got to share it with the person. We sent them the voice memo with the prayer in it and everything. So
And that's what I think art does. Like when God has called us to be creatives, and we're both creatives. I'm a writer, you're a musician, and I feel like creativity at its finest is when it helps people encounter the presence of God,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's even a Christian thing or not per se. It's
Sure.
like ushering people into the presence of God. There's a connection that happens not only when you write it, but when you share it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm always encouraging you to put out your music, not because like, oh, you need to be some successful Christian artist or anything, but because there's something like that happens when people get to experience that through your music. And I know for me, a well-timed song, a worship song, when I'm going through stuff and this song comes on and it's like the Lord ministers to me so much through it, like those are the moments.
Yeah.
That's why you put out the music, is because there's someone on the other side who's waiting to be ministered to through those words that they need in that very moment, like your song Comforter that is ministered to me and so many others already.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of it. It's not about, worldly success or numbers or downloads. It's like giving an opportunity for God to minister to someone through your gift that he's given you. It's not you, it's all him. It's all for his glory.
Right.
And that's such a beautiful thing. And I would love if you could share just your upcoming song, Eyes on You, please. Or
sure.
Share that it's coming. It's amazing. And maybe just a little bit.
Sure, it's coming and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's coming.
And let's just do like a quick shameless plug for some of your songs that you're working on, because they're so good.
Oh, thanks. Yep, there's songs coming. Eyes on You is one of the first songs I wrote when we got here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the whole song is basically about how everything changes in the presence of God. Mm-hmm. And so regardless of whatever current situation or moment is happening, we don't have to be caught up in it. We don't have to be, and I kind of push at some of that, whether it's our own, like, why are we in Tennessee? And oh gosh, where are you leading us?
What are we doing?
Which is kind of what I brought to it. Yeah. Or it's the moment of like, you've been going to churches and you can't get connected and you're kind of feeling this feeling of like, I don't want to be a consumer. I want to be like a part of something. And why does it feel like that's not happening anywhere I go? Like we've experienced seasons like that. And so the church can kind of feel lifeless and just routine and, or I was writing it in the middle of like just the insane politics. And so also thinking like, gosh, the world's so divided. How can, and every time your mind goes to, why is this like this? Or how can this be this way? Or how, but the truth is like, if my eyes are on Jesus, impossible things are possible. Yeah. And so the, crazy dissension, the, the feeling of disconnectedness, the aloneness, all that stuff, it all can change in a moment. Amen. When the presence of God is there, everything can change. And so that's the heart kind of behind the song.
It's so good. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Thanks.
And I'll make sure to link your songs. That one's not out yet. It's coming soon. So make sure to follow him online on Instagram. We'll link all that in the show notes. And I'll link a few of your other songs that are already out. Yeah. Because you have some really good ones that have come out in the last year that I think will be an encouragement for people.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So I would love if you could just wrap up our time just praying. I feel like the word that keeps coming to mind with this conversation is just that word encounter, like people encountering God. Whether it's at their church, whether it's on their treadmill, whether it's at home with their kids or through their creative endeavors, whatever it looks like for people, if you could just close us in prayer that they would just encounter his presence in a fresh and mighty way. I'd be so grateful.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so wherever you're listening, unless you're driving, don't close your eyes.
Don't do that.
But let's do exactly that. Let's posture our hearts. Yeah, let's bow. Jesus, we love you, Father God, Holy Spirit. Thank you so much for just this beautiful woman that I get to do life with. Thank you for this outlet, for being able to connect with people beyond just our living room and for it to feel like they're in our living room. God, I just want to pray for just a sensitivity. I always think of the times when I feel distant from you, or I feel just the weight of the world, is the times when I feel kind of callous. I feel like the phrase that always comes to me is, I've lost the sweetness. I've lost that sensitivity to your presence. And so, God, I just want to pray for just a supernatural softening on people's hearts and minds. Just that there would be moments that just the slightest turn of their head back towards you would be met with such an encounter with your presence that it draws them all the way back. And so, God, I just pray for that. I pray both for a softening on their hearts. I pray for a courage to turn towards you again, even if it's been, decades, or if it's been just a day, and they already feel like they are caught up in so many other things, that just that simple turn back to you, even in this time of prayer, would be met with such an overwhelming sense of your presence, God, that it brings them back to that sweetness. And that would be a thing that anchors in them so that they are drawn back to it beyond this conversation, podcast episode, and prayer time. So we love you. We thank you for all you do. We pray this in your beautiful name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. You're my favorite person in the whole world. I just love you. And I'm grateful for the man you are, the husband you are, for 15 years of marital bliss.
Marital bliss.
I'm so grateful. And if you guys are listening, please make sure to rate and review this podcast. We need this podcast to go viral so that my poor husband doesn't have to keep editing my episodes. We need to go viral so I can hire an editor. So he doesn't have to come down at 10 o'clock at night after we get our kids to bed and edit my podcast. So just saying, just throwing it out there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful idea. I would appreciate that.
But I'm really grateful for all the hard, he's my producer and editor and man who makes all of this possible. So I'm so, so grateful. All right. We'll see you guys next week. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in.